Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bedpost Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Erin Pym, and I am the host and producer of the Theatrical Variety Show, which is a stage variety show that I run here in Toronto twice a month. Here at the podcast, I invite guests and performers from my stage show and beyond into the studio to indulge me in a more in-depth conversation about sex and sexuality. This week, I have a very special guest, Shahrazad.
Hello.
Why, hello.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, I'm very excited to have you.
It's lovely to be here.
You were at you did kind of a little panel Q&A portion at my stage show, which you were fantastic in.
I did. That was such a great conversation. It really was.
It was great. I was very impressed with the caliber of the questions.
Yes, they were interesting, weren't they? I don't remember. I think we got put on the spot a few times, but people want to know what exactly a dominatrix does all day and things like that.
Yes. And you are a headmistress. Am I saying that title properly?
You are saying that correctly, yes.
Headmistress. You're a headmistress.
Yeah.
What? Why don't we just start with what is a headmistress? How is that different from a dominatrix? Because it's in the same arena. Mm-hmm. So what is a headmistress?
Well, let's start by saying that there are really no official titles for anybody in the scene, anybody in the BDSM scene. But I took on the title of headmistress when I opened my dungeon. Mm-hmm. And I do mentor and work with 10 other dominants.
Yes.
So as the headmistress of the dungeon, I am the one who manages it and acts as a mentor for the people who work with me. I'm the one who, giving them a little bit of direction, of context for what they're doing, helping them to succeed in what they're doing, because it really isn't that easy. Right now, you could say that the pro BDSM industry is kind of it's very oversaturated. There are a lot of people doing it, and so to do it well and to do it in a really professional and skilled way does require skill development. So
yes.
I just make sure that everybody's on a good track.
Yeah, that's funny. I was listening to a podcast on the way here, off the cuffs. Love you guys. They were talking to a female dominant, about female dominance, and they were kind of saying the same thing, that there's now a lot of female dominance everywhere.
Everywhere.
And they call themselves mistress or whatever else. Mm-hmm. But probably haven't earned the title and probably don't really know what the hell they're doing.
What's involved? Yeah.
Yeah, what is involved.
Yeah.
And I don't know if guys are just easy to please and they just, but it's a little more nuanced than just picking up a paddle and beating someone.
It certainly is,
right?
Anybody can pick up a paddle and hit somebody with it.
Yes, and call themselves a dominatrix or a mistress.
And look really pretty in latex or whatever, what have you. I think the pro domination aspect of the sex industry is a little bit different from other aspects of the sex industry, in the sense that the kinds of activities that you're engaging in, generally speaking, once you get beyond a basic level of BDSM and kink activities, do require skill in order to implement safely.
Yeah,
right?
Just for safety.
Just for safety. You don't want to be sticking needles in somebody because it just occurred to you that might be a fun thing to do with no prior knowledge of how to do it.
Yes.
You don't want to, do breath play with somebody if you've never done it before and you have no idea how long it's going to take that person to pass out. And,
Yes.
So there are so many different skill sets that are required. And so for the client's safety, for the consumer's safety, it's really important that you do some research and find a mistress who has taken the time to learn how to do many of those things safely.
Yes. And those 10 dominants that are under you at your dungeon, are they up to snuff? They're
as far as I can see, they are up to snuff. Yes.
I'm curious, what kind of like training or vetting process for you finding your dominance in your dungeon?
Well, one of the things at the Ritual Chamber that's like super important to me is that the people who work with me are actually lifestyle players.
Great.
So they are people who have a personal interest in BDSM. They do, to some degree or another, play in their personal lives. They pursue, workshops and training in their personal lives. They have relationships that are power exchange relationships that are beyond what they're doing professionally. And what that does is it gives them an understanding of what it is they're doing professionally that comes from having gone through their own process of accepting their kinks, right? Because it's very difficult to empathize with somebody who is kinky or who has these different kinds of fantasies when you haven't been through it yourself.
In a very personal way.
In a very personal way. So it gives them a different quality of session with a client when they know what it is that they're going through and they are personally invested in what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of, how did you happen along this track? How do you get to owning a dungeon and having 10 dominants under you? Where did you come from?
Many years. Where did I come from? That's a good question. I've been wondering that myself. I sometimes I look back and I go, it's been 15 years. What were you doing in those 15 years? Wow. So it has been a long time. This industry it's hard to stay in for a long time. I've seen many people come and go out of the industry because if you don't have an absolute love for what you're doing, you burn out really quick.
Yeah.
You burn out
No
really
staying
quick.
power.
Yeah. So I guess my journey started with my own awakening to the fact that I had kinky fantasies, that I was interested in dominance, that I liked being assertive, that I liked taking control of situations in the bedroom and kind of in a larger psychological landscape. So I like controlling people. No surprise there.
Surprise! You're not.
Yeah, exactly. I really like getting responses from people. I like the I don't know. I like making people go to places of vulnerability and being and seeing them or witnessing them in that place. So my journey kind of started coming to an awareness of that, and then realizing that I had totally repressed that part of myself because that's not how women are supposed to be.
Did you have like an Oprah aha moment with that?
What my aha moment really came when I'd been raised quite religious.
Okay.
And so got fed this script that, women are supposed to be sexually subservient and all these things. And in my mind, that was always kind of ridiculous. And then I just, I would look at like people like Madonna or Betty Page or those kind of women. And I'd be like, there's something like I recognize myself in that, but I don't know how to like connect, point A to point B. I wasn't sure how I could find that within me. And it wasn't until I met somebody who was a pro sub who became a very good friend of mine when I was 17, and she was telling me a little bit about what she did and how she did it, and something just clicked, and I went, you know what? There is something within this arena of BDSM that could be a vehicle for me to reclaim my power and to explore what it is to be an active participant in the creation of my own erotic
sexuality
landscape.
Your own,
yeah. So
yes.
Anyway, and then one thing led to another. I worked as an independent it's like, do you want the short story or the long story? Worked as an independent pro-dom for many years. Struggled through it. It's not easy to build up a client base.
Yeah, independent. To start independent.
Yeah.
That's kind of difficult.
Well, I actually, to be honest with you, I started at a house that is no longer in existence at this point in time. But I started there. I worked there for about 9 months, and then from there went independent. So once I had a grasp of the scope of what was involved, I was exploring a lot then in my own personal life, and so I kind of put the two together and went, I can do this. This is something I want to pursue. This is fascinating, and I love people's psychoerotic landscapes. It's just it's fascinating to me.
Endlessly interesting to me.
Endlessly,
yeah. Something I was also listening to on a podcast recently, switching. Do you agree that, and also some people, have I've heard around the block that dominance a lot of times, or sometimes you would know, not me, might start off as a pro sub, or might sub at some point to kind of learn the other side of things. Is that something you think is necessary or is not necessary?
It's it's probably one of the most common questions I get, and there are some dungeons in the city that operate that way, that require that all those learnings start off in a submissive position in order to learn how to top. And that's a very kind of like old guard leather idea.
That's old school.
Yeah, it's kind of an old school idea that you have to kind of start at the bottom and work your way up.
Literally,
Literally start at the bottom. Totally. So exactly. So and I'm a little bit more new school in the sense that I do think there is value to a dominant knowing what something feels like before they subject another person to it. So it's very hard to get a sense of, let's say, something like corporal punishment or spanking or flogging or whipping or that kind of thing, to get a sense of the nuances of each different type of implement and what kind of sensation that's going to create, and what the kind of gradation of pain and pleasure you could create with that implement if you've never felt it yourself.
Yeah, and the types of sensation that's creating for the person.
Absolutely.
Via different implements and how hard or soft or nuanced the hits are. Yeah.
Totally. So I do think that for a dominant to voluntarily experience or bottom for some of those different types of activities that are really hard to get a sense of just kind of by thinking about them, is very valuable to developing empathy and an empathetic connection with the submissive. Do I think that it has to be done, that a dominant needs to be submissive for a prolonged period of time in order to graduate to being a dominant? I think it helps, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Yeah.
I believe you have some workshops and things coming up at the Ritual Chamber about people who are interested in pursuing domination, females specifically, right?
Yeah.
Interested in dominating and kind of learning the ropes.
Learning the ropes. That's what we do. We teach them the ropes. Well, yes, we do. Because I have so many people coming to me all the time saying, "Do you train? Do you mentor? Do you?" And my mentorship time is dedicated to the house doms at my dungeon. But the courses that are coming up are in March. They're every Tuesday night in March. And the series is called the Femdom Academy. It is called the Femdom Academy. It's mostly geared to femdoms who are topping men or women, or people of all genders, really. But male dominance may benefit from it as well, in the sense we're talking about skills that aren't gendered. So we're talking about things like the scope of your responsibility as a dominant, or ways to help a submissive manage and work through sensations that are painful, or things like that. The ethics of being a dominant, stuff like that. And it's really relevant to everybody, but I speak from my position as a femdom, and so that is a unique position.
Yes.
So there will be value there for everybody, though, who is interested in developing their skills as a top and as a dominant and becoming better at it. So it's not like a 101 type of course.
Say, it sounds like a 102 maybe.
It's a little bit of 102.
Yeah.
Yeah.